Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, bandits kill 5 people, including 2 village heads, in attacks on 2 communities in Karim Lamido local government area of Taraba State. UNHCR says that about 218,000 Nigerian refugees are spread across Chad, Cameroon and Niger Republic, while 46,000 refugees from Cameroon are resident in Nigeria. House of Representatives pushes for act to ensure that 40% of the annual budget is earmarked for capital projects in the next 10 years as bill scales second reading. And rescuers from several countries scramble to find survivors of earthquake that hit Albania, killing 28 people and injuring 650.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's foreign reserves slipped below the $40 billion level as central bank vows to continue defending the naira at the forex market.
And on sports news tonight, African champions the Tigers of Nigeria, drawn with world champions the US, hosts Serbia and Mozambique in the final qualifying tournament for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics.
And from Abuja, Civil Society Situation Room asks National Assembly to prioritize passage of electoral reform bills over those targeting prohibition of hate speech.
We begin with security concerns, where at least 5 people have been killed after gunmen invaded 2 communities in Karim Lamido local government area of Taraba State. Those killed are 2 village heads, the chairman of the vigilante group, and 2 other persons. The chairman of the council told Channels Television that about 30 gunmen invaded 2 communities and killed the village heads of Balingo 1 and Balingo 2 in Old Muri Chiefdom on Monday night. He says that after killing the vigilante group leader, the attackers abducted his 3 children and set their house ablaze. The gunmen also attacked Kiria village, chasing away residents from their homes and markets, forcing them to take refuge in Andeme village, a few kilometers away. The police command in Taraba State is yet to confirm the incident, despite calls and text messages sent to the commissioner of police and the spokesperson in the command. In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the violence in Boki local government area of Cross River State, which he says has led to a yet-to-be-ascertained number of deaths and arson attacks in the past 24 hours. In a statement from his spokesperson, Mr. Garba Shehu, the president notes that so far there have been claims and counterclaims as to who restarted the killings and arson between the neighboring communities of Nsadop community and Boji community. According to President Buhari, no dispute or grievances is worth the violent snatching away of another person's life. Nigerians must learn to live peacefully with each other and seek less brutish means of resolving conflicts. Our country does not need another war. While acknowledging that security agencies are already intervening to end the crisis, the president also asked the Cross River State government and the Boki local government authorities to ensure that the unfortunate situation is effectively resolved. And to a security fallout, there are about 218,000 Nigerian refugees in Chad, Cameroon and Niger Republic, and that's according to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Addressing the news conference in Abuja, the UNHCR country representatives, Mr. Antonio Chenhandula, asked the federal government to create conditions that will facilitate the return of the refugees. Mr. Chenhandula adds that Nigeria is currently housing 46,000 refugees from Cameroon, whom are spread across Benue, Cross River and Taraba states. He also adds that only 1.2 million of the 1.8 million internally displaced persons are receiving assistance.
We may have another 2,000 or 3,000 more that have not yet been registered, but we have registered together with the government, with NCFRMI, exactly 46,000 Cameroon refugees. The majority are in Cross River. We have around 5,600 in Taraba, 6,400 in Benue State, and most of the rest, that is so many thousand, are in actually Cross River State. And then, of course, let's not forget that we have also Nigerian populations have been displaced out of Nigeria. There are refugees in Cameroon, 96,000 Nigerian refugees. In Chad, 12,000 Nigerian refugees. And in Niger, 112,000 Nigerian refugees. The total of the IDP population that is accessible is different from the total of the IDP population that receives assistance. The total accessible is 1.8. The total assisted is 1.2.
To other stories now, the Imo State Governor Emeka Ihedioha says that his administration has concluded plans to decongest prisons in Owerri by freeing some juvenile offenders who have been awaiting trial for so many years now. Governor Ihedioha disclosed this at an opening ceremony of a 3-day reformation and reorientation seminar for juvenile offenders at the Imo State Command of the Nigeria Correctional Service.
The governor of Imo State, Emeka Ihedioha, and his team arrived at the State Command of the Nigeria Correctional Service along Okigwe Road in Owerri. His first assignment is an on-the-spot assessment of the correctional center. The state government has decided to set up a prerogative of mercy committee to decongest the Owerri prisons and also organize a reformation program for juvenile offenders. The correctional service is pleased with the decision.
For the juvenile, we have been trying to identify the existence and causes of their antisocial behavior so as to be able to mold their character for better.
The Imo State government says the idea of the 3-day program for the young persons is in line with the United Nations mandate to strengthen juvenile justice system.
Evidence has shown that first-time offenders do not reoffend, and that reformation and reorientation are the best response to offenses committed by these young people.
Governor Ihedioha believes that juvenile offenders can still be salvaged from the dark clutches of perpetual delinquency.
This government in Imo State is indeed committed to any set of reasonable reforms in the correctional system, especially measures that seek to correct and not condemn, rehabilitate and not reject, restore and not cast away. The necessity to salvage our young ones from the dark clutches of perpetual delinquency cannot be overemphasized. We would, therefore, leave no stone unturned to ensure the reformation, reorientation, and re-entry of juvenile offenders as useful members of the community.
These juvenile offenders within the next 3 days will be trained to cut hair, to make paints and shoes. They will also receive lectures on human rights violation and character values. Hopefully, this will help them when they finally leave the correctional center.
A bill for an act to establish and ensure that 40% of the nation's annual budget is earmarked for capital projects in the next 10 years has scaled the second reading in the House of Representatives. The bill, which is sponsored by the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, seeks to pay more attention to infrastructure development. According to the Speaker, the bill is expected to stimulate the economy and increase the nation's gross domestic product. Our correspondent, Tere Kumi, reports.
Is that in drawing another map.
The minority leader of the House of Representatives, delegated by the Speaker, leads the debate and moves a motion during Wednesday's plenary session for the second reading of a bill which seeks to ensure that 40% of the nation's annual budget is allocated to capital projects.
What this bill is trying to do is to correct that abnormalities, where in a situation capital projects are kind of sidelined or neglected.
The bill, which is sponsored by the Speaker of the House, targets increasing GDP, stimulation of the economy, among others.
In providing infrastructure, it has a lot of multiplier effect, because when you provide power infrastructure, companies will come up, and our younger youth will get employment. If we provide good roads, our agricultural produce can move to where they can be sold.
There must be enough money to spend for infrastructures in our country. And to that extent, 40% is a good starting point, such that any government that comes into power will know that 40% is 40%. So there's nothing like tampering with it, backward or forward.
The Speaker believes that the numerous abandoned projects in the country could be blamed on the poor allocation to capital projects over the years.
There is no way I know how you can send in such sums for budget and expect that the projects will be completed. Let's remember that it's a 10-year, almost like an experimental thing, subject to review after 10 years.
The bulk of the country's budget in the years past have been largely consumed by recurrent expenditure and debt servicing, which do not contribute to the economic growth of any nation. However, while the lawmakers call for increased capital expenditure, it is also important to harp on the need for revenue generation to fund the budget, and also cutting down the cost of governance in all aspects, which makes up the recurrent expenditure in the annual budget. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
From the legislature to the executive, Nigeria has not reached any agreement with neighboring countries to facilitate the reopening of the land borders. According to the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, and the Minister of Information, Mr. Lai Mohammed, even when the border closure is temporary and has caused food inflation, the benefits far outweighs the disadvantages. They stated this while addressing State House correspondents at the end of a weekly Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja. Our correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
It is the last Federal Executive Council meeting for November of 2019. After hours of deliberations, Information Minister Alhaji Lai Mohammed, representing the Attorney General of the Federation, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, give a breakdown of the meeting.
The growth in 2019 has shown to be much stronger every quarter, leading to a cumulative growth of 2.17% by the end of the third quarter.
Council approved these roads for 7.249 billion for the first one in Oyo, 7.593 for the second one in Niger, and 4.510 for the third one in Kano.
By what we did today in Council, we become the third country in Africa to ratify this treaty. I think the importance of ratification of this treaty is not lost on any of us. Nobody wants to see what happened in Hiroshima in 1945.
Mr. Fashola is asked about where the priorities of government should be on road construction.
Roads are so strategic and important for the collective ownership and connectivity that represents the diversity of our nation. And so right in there were very strong arguments about, look, this is our own benefit of democracy. Approve it for us.
The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning says the food inflation faced in Nigeria now is as a result of the closure of land borders, a situation Mr. Lai Mohammed says is temporary.
What has been happening over the years is that our neighbors would transload the container, put about 5 containers on one truck and drive it to the border, and as if it's only one container that they are going to pay duties on. We have asked our neighbors, please let's all respect the protocol on transit. If they do that, the borders will be opened. But you cannot continue to play the big brother at the expense of our national security, at the expense of our national economy.
According to the minister, as of this moment, there hasn't been any agreement reached between Nigeria and his neighbors on how best to end the smuggling that happens across his borders. It is also hoped that an agreement is reached soon. That way, the food inflation Nigeria is facing at the moment could come to an end. Kayla Magwa, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, Godi Jidemba Foundation public lecture seeks to inspire credible leadership in Africa that is development-minded, calls for continents to unite in trade. Stay with us.